Before the story begins, close your eyes for just 1 second and imagine this. You are a grown woman. A smart woman. A woman who has survived heartbreak, rebuilt herself from nothing, and promised yourself that you would never let anyone make you feel small again. Now imagine you walk into the most beautiful restaurant you have ever seen in your life. Crystal chandeliers. Roses on every table. Soft jazz floating through the air like a secret. And sitting across from you is a man your family chose. A man you do not want. A man who represents everything you have been running from, an arranged future, a life decided for you, a cage wrapped in silk. Your heart is pounding. Your palms are sweating. And then, you see him. A stranger. Sitting alone at the bar like he owns not just the room, but the entire world inside it. Dark eyes. Sharp jaw. A stillness about him that is more dangerous than any storm you have ever stood in. And in one wild, desperate, completely irrational moment, you walk up to that stranger, grab his face in your hands. And you kiss him. Right there. In front of everyone. You think you are saving yourself. You have absolutely no idea that you have just walked into the arms of the most powerful, most feared, most relentless man in all of Seoul. And he is not going to let you go. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Before we begin, my mum said this video cannot reach 10,000 views and 1,000 subscribers. Let's prove her wrong. Smash that like button, subscribe right now, and drop in the comments where you are watching from. Now let's get into this story. Amora Owusu had exactly 4 minutes to ruin her own life. She stood outside Seoul's most exclusive restaurant, Éclat, in a red dress that her best friend Priya had picked out, wearing heels that were already starting a personal war with her ankles, and holding a tiny clutch purse that could barely fit her phone, her lip gloss, and her dignity. Her dignity, she decided, was going to be the first thing sacrificed tonight. You can do this, she whispered to herself in Chi, the Ghanaian language her grandmother had pressed into her tongue like a second heartbeat. You are Amora Abina Owusu. You survived medical school in Accra, residency in London, and that one terrible haircut in 2019. You can survive one blind date. She could not survive this blind date. She had known it the moment her older brother Kofi had called her 3 weeks ago with that voice, that careful, excited, plotting voice, and said, Amora, I met someone perfect for you. The someone perfect was Dr. Gerald Mensah. 47 years old. Divorced twice. Wore socks with sandals unironically. Had reportedly once told his last girlfriend that a woman's highest calling was to be a soft place for a man to land. Amora was not soft. Amora was a surgeon. She had steady hands and an even steadier spine, and the only thing she had ever been a soft place for was her grandmother's old cat, and even that cat had a lot of opinions. She pushed open the restaurant door. Éclat hit her like a physical thing, the warmth, the golden light, the breathtaking sweep of floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River glittering below like scattered diamonds. For one traitorous second, Amora forgot she was here against her will and simply breathed. Beautiful. Everything was impossibly, achingly beautiful. And then she saw Gerald. He was already seated. Already checking his watch. Already looking at her with the particular expression of a man who had expected something and was calculating whether she met the requirements. Amora felt her stomach drop straight through the marble floor. She recognized that look. She had seen it on the faces of consultants who underestimated her in surgery suites. On the faces of men who asked where she was really from when she said she was Ghanaian British. On the face of her ex-boyfriend Marcus, 3 seconds before he told her she was a lot to handle. She was a lot to handle. She had accepted this about herself with great peace and enthusiasm. But she refused, to sit across from Gerald Mensah for the next 2 hours and smile while he handled her. She needed an exit strategy. She needed one right now. Her eyes swept the restaurant in pure survival mode. The Maître d'. The other diners. The long polished bar running along the far left wall where... Oh no. Oh, absolutely not. There was a man sitting at the bar who had absolutely no business being that beautiful in public without some kind of warning system. A siren. A flashing light. Something to prepare innocent women for what they were about to walk into. He was Korean, tall even seated, dressed in a black suit that sat on his shoulders like it had been personally apologizing to him for its entire existence. His jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. His dark hair was pushed back from his face in a way that looked effortless and probably cost more than her rent. And his eyes, even from across the room, were the kind of dark, still, dangerous dark that made you feel like you were standing at the edge of something very deep and very cold. He was not smiling. He was not looking at anyone. He sat with the particular stillness of a man who knew that if he wanted the world's attention, he would simply decide to take it. 3 men in equally expensive suits stood behind him at precise distances. Not friends. Not colleagues. Guards. Amora's surgeon brain filed this information calmly. Wealthy, powerful, protected, and almost certainly complicated. Her heart filed a completely different report. Him. Go. Now. She had approximately 4 to 5 seconds before Gerald spotted her hovering at the entrance and waved her over with that watch-checking energy. She thought about her grandmother, who used to say, "Amora, the problem with you is that you think too long and then act too fast." Grandmother was right, as grandmothers always are. Because Amora stopped thinking entirely, squared her shoulders, walked straight to the bar, tapped the beautiful, terrifying, clearly powerful stranger on the shoulder. And when he turned around with those impossible dark eyes and looked at her like she was either the most interesting or most foolish thing he had seen all year, she grabbed his face in both hands. And she kissed him. It was supposed to be quick. Strategic. A prop in her escape plan. It was not quick. The moment her lips touched his, something shifted. In the air, in the room, in the very specific region of Amora's chest where her good sense used to live. He was still for exactly 1 heartbeat. And then his hand came up, slow and deliberate, and curved around her jaw like she was something precious and something caught at exactly the same time. And he kissed her back. When she finally pulled away, breathless and completely off script, his eyes were open and fixed on her face with an expression she could not name. Not anger. Not confusion. Something quieter. Something worse. "Well," he said. His voice was low and unhurried, accented and smooth as aged whiskey. "That is one way to introduce yourself." Amora opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I needed a rescue." One dark eyebrow lifted. A ghost of something crossed his mouth. "From who?" She glanced over her shoulder. Gerald was standing up from the table now, squinting in her direction. She turned back to the stranger with her most brilliant, most desperate smile. "From the man in the brown suit who is about to ruin my entire evening," she said. "I am so sorry. I will explain everything. I just need you to please, play along for 5 minutes." The stranger looked past her shoulder at Gerald. Then back at her. His dark eyes moved over her face slowly. Carefully. Like he was reading something written in very small print. 5 minutes, he said finally. And then he smiled. It was the kind of smile that did not reach his eyes and did not need to. It was the kind of smile that rearranged the air in a room. Amora's heart did something completely unprofessional. She did not yet know his name. She did not yet know that every single person in this restaurant, from the waitstaff to the kitchen to the 3 guards behind him, had gone very, very still the moment she touched him. She did not yet know that the last man who had put his hands on Jeju without permission had not been seen again. She did not yet know any of this. All she knew was that her plan had worked. And that she was, without any doubt whatsoever, in the most beautiful and most dangerous trouble of her entire life. His name, she found out 40 seconds later, was Jeju. She found this out not because he told her. He had not volunteered anything, sitting beside her at the bar with the composed, watchful stillness of a man who gave information the way banks gave loans, carefully, and only when he decided you were worth the risk. She found out because Gerald walked over. Gerald, with his brown suit and his twice-divorced energy and his watch-checking soul, walked over to the bar with his chin lifted and his chest puffed in the particular way of men who believe that confidence and entitlement are the same thing. "Amora," he said. Not hello. Not are you all right. Just her name, like a claim. Amora felt Jaewon go still beside her. It was not a tense stillness. It was something quieter and far more unnerving, the stillness of something very large that has decided it does not need to move to make its point. Gerald. She smiled her most luminous smile, the one she used in surgery when everything was going wrong and she needed the room to stay calm. I am so sorry, I ran into an old friend. Gerald's eyes moved to Jaewon with the look of a man doing arithmetic. Expensive suit. Unusual composure. 3 men standing behind him like shadows. The arithmetic clearly produced a number Gerald did not like. I don't think we've met, Gerald said, extending his hand with the confidence of someone who had never once considered that a handshake might be refused. Jaewon looked at the hand. Then at Gerald. Then, unhurriedly, he picked up his glass of whiskey and took a slow sip. No, Jaewon said simply. We haven't. The silence that followed was not empty. It was full, stuffed with something that made Gerald's outstretched hand slowly retract and made the 2 nearest waiters find reasons to be somewhere else immediately. Amora watched this happen with the detached fascination of a scientist observing a natural phenomenon. He did not even raise his voice, she thought. He just existed harder. J10, one of the guards behind them said quietly, not to Gerald, not to Amora, just releasing the name into the air like a warning. Gerald blinked. Then Gerald went the specific color of a man who has just realized he has been doing his arithmetic in the wrong currency entirely. Of course, Gerald said, and his voice had completely changed. All the chin had gone out of it. Mr. O. I apologize, I didn't. He stopped. Swallowed. Looked at Amora with an expression that was now much less claim and much more retreat. Amora, perhaps another evening. Perhaps, Amora agreed warmly. Safe drive, Gerald. And Gerald left. He did not walk back to his table. He walked directly to the exit with the focused energy of a man who had decided that wherever he needed to be tonight, it was not here. Amora watched him go. Then she released a breath so enormous it could have inflated a small aircraft. Ei. She pressed a hand to her chest in pure relief, the Ghanaian exclamation slipping out before she could dress it in anything more polished. That man left so fast I felt the wind. Beside her, something happened that she did not expect. J10 laughed. It was brief, barely a sound, more a shift in his expression, a loosening, but it was real, and it transformed his face in a way that hit Amora somewhere between her sternum and her better judgment. You kissed a stranger, he said, to escape a blind date. I kissed a stranger, she corrected pleasantly, to escape a terrible blind date. There is a distinction. Gerald once told my brother that women were meant to be soft landing places for men. She picked up a cocktail menu from the bar and examined it. I am a surgeon. I have cut people open and held their hearts in my hands. I am no one's landing place. There was a pause. A surgeon, J1 repeated. He was looking at her differently now. She could feel it without turning to face him, a recalibration, a new kind of attention. Cardiothoracic, she confirmed. Amora Owusu. I am Ghanaian British. I have been in Seoul for 8 months on a research fellowship, and I have just used you as a prop in my escape plan, which means I owe you a very sincere apology and probably a drink. She finally turned to look at him. He was watching her with those deep, unreadable eyes, and up close, dangerously close now, she could see things she had missed from across the room. The faint scar along his jaw, pale against his skin. The way his hands around his glass were perfectly still but somehow communicated readiness. The absolute absence of any softness in his face except for that one brief, vanished laugh. You are not afraid of me, he said. It was not quite a question. Amora considered this honestly. I hold hearts for a living, she said. I have a slightly different relationship with fear than most people. Something moved in his eyes. Quick and deep, like light through dark water. J10, he said, and for the first time he offered his own name voluntarily, without the prompt of his guard, without being asked. Like a decision. I know, she said. Your guard said it. Also Gerald's face said it, rather loudly. Another flicker. Almost another laugh. What did Gerald's face say? He asked, and there was something in his voice now, a thread of warmth, carefully rationed, like he wasn't entirely sure he was allowed to use it. It said, Amora replied, I have made a terrible error and I would like to leave this continent. She smiled. What is it that you do, J10, that makes men in brown suits evaporate on contact? The warmth in his expression closed, very gently, like a door not slammed but firmly shut. Business, he said. Amora was a surgeon. She knew the difference between a scar and a wound. She knew when something had healed into armor. She did not push. Well, she said instead, sliding off the bar stool and smoothing her red dress with the dignity of a woman reclaiming her evening. "Thank you for 5 minutes that saved me 2 hours. I will let you return to your very serious business-related brooding." She extended her hand. "It was genuinely lovely to meet you." He looked at her hand. Then, slowly, with the same deliberateness he seemed to apply to everything, he took it. His grip was warm and firm, and he held it 1 second longer than a handshake required. "Have dinner with me," he said. Amora blinked. What? You came here to eat." He nodded toward the dining room. "So did I. Gerald is gone. It would be a waste of a reservation." She stared at him. He stared back. Patient. Certain. As if refusal was an interesting theoretical concept that had never practically applied to him. "J10," she said slowly. "I do not know anything about you except your name and the fact that you travel with bodyguards and you make grown men run away without saying a single threatening word." "That is more than most people know," he said. "That is not reassuring." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." There was a beat of silence. Amora thought about her grandmother again. "You think too long and act too fast." "Fine," she said. "Dinner. But I am ordering the most expensive thing on the menu." "I would expect nothing less," he said, and stood. He was taller than she had calculated from the bar stool. Broader. He offered his arm with the kind of natural ease that suggested he was accustomed to a different century's manners, and Amora took it with the kind of natural ease that suggested she was accustomed to meeting that energy head-on. They walked into the dining room together. Every single person in Aklar watched them. Amora smiled at the room like she had planned this all along. She had not planned any of this. And somewhere between her heartbeat and her training, a voice that sounded very much like her grandmother said, "Amora, my darling, you are in trouble." She knew. She had known since the kiss. She just didn't know yet how much. The table he was given was not a table anyone else was given. It was set slightly apart from the main dining room, not isolated, but elevated, positioned near the window with the kind of view that the Han River seemed to arrange itself specifically to provide. The lighting here was warmer. The flowers were fresher. The moment they were seated, 3 different members of staff appeared with the coordinated grace of people who had rehearsed specifically for this man. Amora observed all of this with the focused attention she normally reserved for open-chest procedures. "You come here often," she said. It was not a question. "I own it," J1 said, picking up the menu with the same composure he appeared to bring to all things, absolute and unperformed. Amora set down her menu. "You own Aklar." "Among other things." "Among other things," she repeated. "Right." She picked her menu back up. "In that case I am ordering everything with truffle in it. On principle." "The Jeju truffle is excellent," he said. "Then I am ordering 2. Something shifted in the line of his mouth. Not quite a smile. The precursor to one. She ordered the Jeju truffle and the seared foie gras and a glass of champagne she did not look at the price for, and when the server left, she folded her hands on the table and looked directly at J10 in the way she looked at chest x-rays, looking for what did not want to be found. "So," she said, "you own a restaurant, you have bodyguards, you make powerful men nervous, and you are sitting alone at a bar on a Friday night. What is the story?" He looked at her steadily. "What makes you think there is a story?" "Every person has a story. The ones sitting alone at bars usually have the most interesting ones." "What is your story?" he asked. "You are a Ghanaian British cardiothoracic surgeon doing a research fellowship in Seoul. That is not an ordinary Friday night either." "My story," Amora said, "is that I left London after 5 years of working myself into the ground for a hospital that promoted everyone around me and then acted confused when I noticed. I came to Seoul because the research opportunity was extraordinary and because I needed to be somewhere that didn't already have a version of me filed away in its imagination." She tilted her head. "Your turn." He was quiet for a moment. Precise, measured quiet, the kind that felt like a man deciding exactly how much of a door to open. "I run a business," he said finally. "It is complicated. It requires certain securities. The bodyguards. Among other things." She noticed he kept saying that. Among other things. Like a perimeter he was drawing around himself in real time. J1. She said his name plainly, no performance in it. I am a surgeon. I have sat with people in the worst moments of their lives and told them things they did not want to hear with as much honesty and as much gentleness as I could manage. I am very good at knowing when someone is answering questions without saying anything. His eyes moved over her face again with that deep, reading quality. You are direct, he said. I am Ghanaian, she replied. We do not have the time or the metabolism for indirectness. This time, the smile arrived. Small, controlled, clearly not accustomed to being used, but real. My family, he said slowly, as if choosing each word with deliberate hands, has significant interests in Seoul. In Korea. In several countries. The kind of interests that require discretion. Protection. He paused. I manage those interests. Amora heard what he was saying. She also heard everything neatly arranged around what he was not saying. Her surgeon's instinct filed it quietly. Dangerous, it said. Interesting, said another part of her, more treacherously. All right, she said, and left it there. He looked at her like he had expected a different response. You are not going to ask more, he said. You will tell me more when you decide to, she said simply. I am not in the business of forcing information from reluctant patients. It never gives you the whole picture anyway. The food arrived. It was, even by the standards of a woman who had eaten in some of the finest restaurants in London and Accra, extraordinary. The Jeju melted with a warmth that felt almost emotional. The champagne was cold and bright and tasted like someone's very good idea. Amora made a sound that was entirely involuntary. "Ei," she said softly, pressing a hand to her cheek. This is what I came to Seoul for. When she looked up, Jaewon was watching her with an expression that had gone very quiet and very still, but in a different way from his usual stillness. This was not guarded. This was something she didn't have a surgical term for, something that sat in the middle of his chest and looked out through his eyes and seemed, for one unprotected second, almost warm. You make very honest faces, he said. I have been told this is a problem. It isn't, he said. Quiet. Certain. Amora felt heat move up the back of her neck and made an executive decision to redirect. Tell me something true about yourself, she said. Not business. Something real. He considered. I have not had a dinner that felt like this in a very long time. Her heart made a completely unauthorized decision to accelerate. Like what? She asked carefully. Easy, he said, like the word surprised him on its way out. Like something I did not have to manage. Amora looked at him across the table, this powerful, guarded, quietly devastating man, and felt something move in her chest that was warmer and more dangerous than the champagne. Then don't manage it, she said softly. Just eat your food, Jaewon. He picked up his fork. And for the first time since she had sat down, his shoulders dropped, just slightly, just barely, just enough. It was the most unguarded thing she had seen him do. And it absolutely wrecked her. 2 hours passed. Then 3. The restaurant around them quieted, staff beginning the soft choreography of a closing evening, and neither of them moved. The conversation moved from Seoul to Accra to London to the particular loneliness of excellence, the way being exceptional at your work could build a beautiful cage around you. Jaewon-oh, she discovered, had a precise and quietly devastating sense of observation. He noticed things, the way she tucked her thumb when she was making a point, the way she switched between English and the occasional chi exclamation without seeming to notice, the way she laughed with her whole face and then seemed faintly surprised by it every time. You watch people very carefully, she told him. It is necessary in my line of work, he said. She swelled the last of her champagne. And what do you see when you watch me? Long pause. The Han River glittered below. The restaurant had gone almost entirely still around them. Someone, he said carefully, who is exactly what she appears to be. Amora waited. I do not meet many people like that, he finished. The honesty of it, so sparse, so undecorated, hit her harder than any elaborate compliment could have. Jaewon, she said quietly, who are you really? His phone buzzed on the table. Once. He glanced at it and something changed in him instantly. The door she hadn't even realized was open-closed, silently and completely, and he was back, composed, unreachable, executive. He stood. I need to attend to something, he said. He looked at her for a moment, one long, searching, almost reluctant moment, and then he said, "I would like to see you again." Not a question. Not a request. I would like to see you again. Amora should have said something sensible. She had 17 sensible things prepared. Okay, she said instead. He reached into his jacket, produced a card, no name on it, just a number, and set it on the table. Then he turned and walked out of Éclat with his guards falling into formation around him, and the room rearranged itself in his wake like water after a stone. Amora sat alone at the most beautiful table in the restaurant, holding a card with no name on it, her heart beating considerably faster than her medical training suggested was ideal. She turned the card over. On the back, in handwriting that was spare and precise, "Thank you for the rescue." Amora Owusu, who had survived medical school in London and that haircut and a great many things, put her face in her hands and laughed until her eyes watered. She was absolutely, completely, and without any remaining doubt, in so much trouble. She did not call the number for 3 days. This was a deliberate decision made with the full force of her intelligence and her self-preservation instinct, both of which were in complete agreement. J10 is complicated. J10 has bodyguards and no-name business cards and the kind of stillness that suggests he has made people disappear. J10 made you forget your own name for several seconds when he kissed you back in a bar, and you need to be a grown woman about this. She lasted 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, her best friend and fellow fellowship researcher, Priya Ne, who was from Kerala, catastrophically nosy, and Amora's only soul-based person, showed up at her apartment with coffee and the expression of a woman who had already done research. "You were at Éclat 3 nights ago," Priya said, walking in without being invited, which was simply her nature. "You were seen. There are photos." Amora froze mid-pour of her morning tea. "What photos?" Priya held up her phone. The photo was from a distance, slightly blurred, taken on what appeared to be another diner's phone and posted to a Korean social media account with approximately 40,000 followers. It showed, clearly enough to make Amora's stomach drop, a woman in a red dress kissing a man at the bar of Éclat. The caption, which Priya translated with relish, read, "Did J10 just get kissed by a stranger at Éclat? I am not okay." There were 9,000 comments. "Priya," Amora said carefully, setting down her tea. "Who is J10? Priya sat down on her sofa with the energy of a woman who had been waiting to deliver this information since approximately 3 days ago. "J10, she said, "is the head of the O Group. Which sounds like a pleasant corporate conglomerate and is, on paper, exactly that: real estate, shipping, private equity, several legitimate businesses including, yes, Éclat." She paused. "And also, according to approximately every whisper in Seoul's financial and government circles, he runs the most powerful organized crime network in South Korea." Silence. A long, loud, surgical silence. "He is," Priya continued with enormous care, "what people around here refer to as the icebreaker. Because he walks into rooms and everything warm just stops." Amora sat down next to her. "I kissed him," she said. "You kissed him," Priya confirmed. "In front of everyone." "In front of everyone." "And then had a 3-hour dinner with him." Priya's expression was an exquisitely balanced mixture of horror, concern, and completely undisguised fascination. And apparently no one, not his guards, not the staff, not anyone in that restaurant, did anything, because apparently touching J10 without permission is not a thing people do and survive unscathed, and yet you. "I grabbed his face," Amora said. "With both hands." "With both hands," Priya repeated faintly. They sat together in silence for a moment, processing. "Are you in danger?" Priya asked. Amora thought about the card. The handwriting. "Thank you for the rescue." The way his shoulders had dropped over dinner. The way he had looked at her like she was the first honest thing he had seen in years. "I don't think so," she said slowly. "I think." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it. It buzzed again. Priya grabbed her arm with both hands. "If that is who I think it is." Amora picked up the phone. The text read, "The research hospital near Gangnam has excellent coffee on the 3rd floor. I happen to know, because I funded it. JW." Amora stared at the screen. Then she started laughing, the full-face laugh that surprised her every time it arrived. She texted back, "Are you telling me you own my hospital coffee?" The reply came in 11 seconds, among other things. Priya, reading over her shoulder, grabbed a cushion and pressed it to her face to muffle whatever sound she was making. Amora typed back, "That is either very charming or a deeply concerning flex." "I haven't decided." "Take your time," he replied. "I have all morning." Priya lowered the cushion. Her eyes were enormous. "Amora," she said, in the voice of a woman watching a friend walk toward a beautiful cliff. "What are you doing?" Amora looked at her phone. Then she typed, "Third floor. Noon?" The reply came in 4 seconds. "I'll be there." She looked at Priya. Priya looked at her. "I'm going to meet a Mafia boss for hospital coffee," Amora said, in the tone of a woman reporting a medical finding she herself could not quite believe. "You are," Priya agreed. "In the hospital that he apparently funded." "In the hospital that he apparently funded." A beat. "He has very good taste in kissing," Amora said, mostly to herself. Priya threw the cushion at her. Noon found Amora on the 3rd floor of the Seoul Gangnam Research Medical Center with her white coat over her red dress. She had come from a morning consultation, and her hair pulled up and a chai tea from the cafe that was, she had to admit, exceptional. She felt him before she saw him. There was a shift in the corridor, a quality of attention moving, staff and visitors instinctively rearranging, and then Jeju walked through the glass doors of the cafe floor in a charcoal coat with 2 guards posted at the corridor entrance and the rest of the world looking slightly less vivid in comparison. He stopped when he saw her. She was leaning against the window counter in her white coat with her stethoscope still around her neck and her tea in her hand, and she watched him stop and she felt, foolishly, warmly, his eyes move over her with something unguarded that he packed away almost immediately. "Nice coat," he said, approaching. "Nice building," she replied. "Among other things, I'm told." He almost smiled. "The coffee." "Outstanding," she admitted. "I'm furious. I wanted to be indifferent about it on principle." He ordered black coffee, no sugar, which tracked, and they found a corner table by the windows, his guards at a discreet distance, the hospital moving its busy hospital rhythms around them. "How was your evening?" she asked. Something flickered. "Managed." The business, he confirmed. He looked at his coffee. "How was yours?" "I was informed by the internet that I kissed a very notorious man," she said pleasantly. "I have 9,000 concerned strangers." He looked up. "I apologize. I can." "It's fine," she said simply. "I've been talked about before. I survived residency." She tilted her head. "Is you being here, publicly, unusual?" A pause. "Yes." "Then why?" He looked at her in that reading way. "You know why." Her heart did the unauthorized accelerating again. She was going to have a serious conversation with it about professional standards. "J1, she said quietly. "I am going to be honest with you because that is the only way I know how to be. I like you. What I have seen of you, I like. But I am also a practical woman, and I would like to understand what this is before I like you any more than I already do." He was quiet. Then, "I don't know what this is," he said. "I know that I have thought about Friday evening more than I have thought about anything in a long time. And I know," he stopped. Seemed to choose. "I know that I would like to find out." Amora looked at him across a hospital coffee table, her stethoscope around her neck, her tea going slightly cold, this dangerous, guarded, quietly human man across from her. "Okay," she said again. "Okay," he said. And for the first time, he smiled at her first. It did something fundamental to the architecture of her chest. She was, she decided, completely done for. He took her to the fish market at 5 in the morning. This was not, Amora had assumed, the typical J10 social itinerary. She was correct. His driver had looked at the destination with an expression of careful neutrality that suggested he had been trained for many unusual assignments, but this one required some internal processing. It had been her suggestion. She had mentioned, at the end of their hospital coffee, that she had been in Seoul for 8 months and still had not been to Noryangjin Fish Market, and he had said, without apparent premeditation, as though the decision bypassed his usual filters entirely, "Sunday. 5 a.m. And here they were. Amora stood in the enormous, fluorescent-lit, glorious chaos of the market in her puffer coat and trainers, surrounded by the smell of ocean and ice and morning, and felt immediately, completely at home. she breathed, turning slowly. The scale of it, the tanks and stalls and shouting vendors, the flash of silver fish, the sheer life of the place, hit her with the particular warmth of everywhere that reminded her of Accra's Makola market, loud and real and unapologetically itself. This is magnificent. Beside her, Jae-won, in a black coat that was slightly less I own 12 buildings than his usual, though only slightly, was watching her watch the market. You've been here 8 months, he said, and you haven't come. I have been working, she said. I work very long hours. Priya says I have the social life of a very dedicated monk. She pointed at a stall of live crabs stacked in organized towers. Are those, how many crabs is that? Several hundred, he said. I love it here, she declared. He blinked. She had already moved to the crab stall, and the vendor, a woman in her 60s with the confident energy of someone who had run this stall for 30 years, looked up at the approaching pair and went momentarily still at the sight of Jae-won. Then her eyes moved to Amora in the puffer coat pointing at the crabs with genuine joy, and something in the vendor's face relaxed into amusement. Amora bargained. In Korean. It was not perfect Korean. It was enthusiastic Korean, strung together with gestures and expressions and one accidental chi exclamation that made the vendor burst out laughing. But she bargained cheerfully and completely, and when she secured a price she was pleased with, she turned to Jae-won with a look of triumph. Did you just, he said. I have been learning, she said proudly. I have an app. I practice on the hospital cleaning staff, who are very patient with me. She held up the bag of crabs. Breakfast. He stared at her. The guards, at their respectful distance, were doing something with their faces that their professional training was barely managing to contain. You want to eat crabs, Jae-won said, at 5:15 in the morning. I want to eat crabs now, she said, while they are fresh and we are here and the city is still waking up. When else? She tilted her head at him. When did you last do something simply because the moment was there, Jae-won? The question landed differently than she'd intended. She saw it in the fractional shift of his expression, the brief unguarding of something that lived beneath all that composure. A long time ago, he said quietly. Then, she said, holding out the bag, you carry the crabs. He took the bag. One of the guards made a sound that was quickly converted into a cough. They ate at a small pojangmaka, a street food tent, at the edge of the market, sitting on low plastic stools at a low table while the vendor prepared the crabs with the brisk expertise of long practice. The tent was warm and steamed and smelled of gokyuguru and sesame, and Amora ate with the focused enthusiasm of a woman who had not had time for a real meal since Thursday. Jae-won watched her. Eat, she said without looking up. I can feel you watching me. You eat like you do everything else, he said. With complete commitment. Yes. She looked up. He was watching her with that quiet, open expression, the one that appeared in unguarded moments and disappeared quickly when he noticed it. She let it stay. What was it like, she asked. Growing up in this. She gestured gently toward the guards. The perimeter. The weight of him. He was quiet for a moment. My father built the business, he said finally. From nothing, and then from things that weren't nothing but weren't clean either. When I was old enough to understand, I was already part of it. There wasn't a moment of choosing. A pause. There was just inheriting. Amora watched him. Did you want to inherit it? Long silence. I wanted to protect my family, he said. The business was the only way I understood how to do that. And now? He looked at her. Now I run it because I know how, and because if I don't, someone else will, and they will not. He stopped. They will not be you, she finished quietly. His eyes met hers. No, he said. They will not be me. Amora understood this, not the specifics, but the architecture of it. The way excellence could become a cage. The way competence could become a sentence. I understand that more than you know, she said softly. Your hospital, he said. My hospital, she agreed. Cardiothoracic surgery is not a specialty you fall into. You choose it, and then it chooses you back very aggressively, and eventually you look up and your whole life has organized itself around it. She dipped a piece of crab into the sauce. The difference is that I chose mine. Yes, he said. Very quiet. The difference is that you chose yours. They sat in the warming morning, in the steam of the food tent, while the fish market moved its loud and living business around them, and neither of them spoke for a while. It was not uncomfortable silence. It was the kind that builds itself between two people who are becoming something to each other and have both noticed but are moving carefully, the way you move around something precious that you're not yet sure you're allowed to have. Amora, he said. J1. The crab is very good. She beamed. I know. He almost laughed. She was going to get a real laugh from this man if it was the last thing she did. The morning sun came through the tent flap in a long warm stripe, and lit him differently, less severe, less armored, and Amora thought, there he is. There is the person under all of that. She wanted to know him. All of him. The managed parts and the unmanaged parts and the parts he didn't know how to show anyone. She acknowledged quietly, in significant emotional trouble. She ate the rest of her crab with contentment. He had a rule. The rule was simple, absolute, and had served him without exception for 34 years. No personal entanglements. Not because he was incapable, J10 understood, with the same precision he brought to financial structures and territorial negotiations, that he was entirely capable of feeling things. He had simply long ago concluded that feeling things in his line of work was a liability that he could not afford. The people who loved him were targets. The people he loved were leverage. And so, no personal entanglements. He broke the rule on a Tuesday evening, though he did not realize it until later. He was in his office on the 14th floor of O Group's Seoul headquarters, floor-to-ceiling glass, the city spread below him like a circuit board of light, when his phone produced a message from Amora's number. Question: Is it normal that your building has better art than the National Museum? He looked at it. Then he looked at his desk, which was covered in documents relating to a territorial dispute in Busan that required his complete and focused attention. Among other things, he typed back. Her reply came instantly: you have a problem. That phrase is doing too much work. Also, I walked past your building today and a very serious man in a black coat outside gave me a look that suggested he recognized me. Do your people know about me? He put down his pen. Yes, he typed. Should I be concerned? He thought about this with the honesty she had come to somehow require of him without asking for it. No, he typed. It means you are protected. A longer pause. Then, protected. Interesting word. Then, also slightly alarming. Then, asterisk also, if I'm being honest, and you know I cannot help being honest, a small part of me that I'm not fully endorsing finds that a little bit asterisk. She sent a small flame emoji. He stared at the flame emoji for longer than the situation required. Are you saying you find this alarming? He typed. I'm saying I find you alarming, she replied. In the way that things that are genuinely good for you can be alarming when you're not used to them. Like exercise. Or honesty. You are comparing me to exercise. Cardio, specifically. High intensity. He looked at his Busan documents. He looked at his phone. He looked at the city below. He called her. She picked up on the second ring. Well, she said, and he could hear her smile without seeing it. This is new. I want to see you, he said. Unmanaged. Unfiltered. The words out before his usual processes caught them. A beat. J1, she said quietly. It is 11 p.m. I know. I have surgery at 7 a.m. I know. Pause. Where are you? She said. 20 minutes later, he was standing outside her apartment building in Jeju, a building that was perfectly respectable and entirely ordinary and somehow felt realer than anywhere he had been in years, and she came down in jeans and a yellow cardigan and her hair loose around her shoulders, carrying 2 takeaway cups of tea she had made herself. She handed him one. You called at 11 p.m., she said, studying him with those clear, direct eyes. What happened? Nothing happened, he said. I wanted to see you. She looked at him. He had the feeling she was doing the chest X-ray reading again. You are not used to wanting things, she said softly. Are you? It was not quite a question. No, he said. She nodded slowly, like this confirmed something she had suspected. Then she looked at her tea. Walk with me, she said. They walked. His guards followed at a distance that Amora had, over their previous meetings, negotiated down from aggressive proximity to something more like a respectful escort. She had told the nearest one, pleasantly but firmly, that she was a surgeon and perfectly capable of handling emergencies, and the guard had looked at J1 and J1, to his own faint surprise, had nodded. They walked along the Han River path, which at 11 p.m. was quiet and dark and smelled of water and grass and the particular nighttime quality of a city at rest. She walked beside him close enough that their arms occasionally touched, and neither of them moved away. "Tell me about Ghana," he said. She looked up at him, surprised. "I want to know," he said simply. And she told him. She told him about Accra, the heat and the noise and the color of it, the way everything smelled of red dust and fried plantain, the particular loudness of family that was never just family but entire networks of obligation and love. She told him about her grandmother, who had raised her after her mother died when Amora was 9, who had pressed chi and strength into her in equal measure and said, always, "Amora, you are going to take up space in this world. Don't apologize for it." She told him about the loneliness of being the first in her family to study abroad, first in her medical school cohort who looked like her, first in rooms that had not been designed with her in mind. She told him about the joy of surgery. The extraordinary, almost sacred experience of holding a heart that was not yet ready to stop. He listened. He listened the way he did everything, with complete, unperformed attention, not waiting for his turn to speak, but actually receiving what she gave him. When she finished, they had walked further than she had realized, and the river was wide and dark and still beside them. "Your grandmother sounds remarkable," he said. "She was," Amora said. "She died 3 years ago." A beat. "She would have had an enormous amount to say about you." Positive. "She was Ghanaian. She would have fed you and interrogated you simultaneously and then issued her verdict over dessert." Amora smiled at the water. She had no patience for men who hid themselves. "She would have found you." She paused. "A project." "A project," he repeated. "A worthwhile one," Amora said. She looked at him. "She would have seen you. The way I—" She stopped. He had gone very still. "The way you what?" he said quietly. The night air moved between them. She could see the city lights reflected in the river, and the particular quality of his face in this light, open in a way she was learning was rare and precious. "The way I am beginning to," she said carefully. "See you." He looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, with all the deliberateness that seemed to be his nature, he reached out and took her hand. Not a dramatic gesture. Not a declaration. Just his hand, warm and steady, closing around hers in the dark beside the river. Her heart was a surgical problem she could no longer solve. They stood there for a while. Not saying anything. Not needing to. Then she looked up at him with a glint in her eye. "You broke your rule," she said. He turned to look at her. "What rule?" "The no personal entanglements rule," she said cheerfully. "You are holding my hand on a riverbank at 11:30 p.m. That is extremely entangled, J1. A pause. "Yes," he said slowly. "I suppose it is. How do you feel about that?" He looked down at their joined hands. Then at her. "Ask me in the morning," he said. She laughed, the full-face laugh, and leaned her head briefly against his shoulder. Just a moment, just a breath. He did not move. He simply held her hand tighter. The rule, he decided, had been wrong all along. She found out on a Wednesday. Not from him, she would have preferred that. She found out the way you found out about storms, by looking up and noticing the sky had changed while you weren't watching. She was leaving the research hospital at 6 p.m., coat on, bag over her shoulder, thinking about whether there was enough ginger in her apartment to make the jollof rice she had been promising herself since Monday, when a car pulled up to the curb that was not her usual ride home. A man got out. 50s. Korean. Expensive suit, but differently expensive from J1's, cheaper material, flashier detail. The kind of expensive that was trying to prove something. "Dr. Owusu," he said. Her name in his mouth was wrong in a way she couldn't immediately name. Amora stopped walking. Her surgeon's brain began running its emergency protocol: assess, stabilize, respond. "I don't think we've met," she said pleasantly. "We haven't." He smiled. "It did not reach anywhere useful. I'm a friend of J10's. I wanted to personally congratulate you on your fellowship." He knew her name. He knew her hospital. He had sent a car. "How kind," she said, with the exact warmth of a woman who was already calculating exits. I'm afraid I have an appointment. Of course. He paused. Please, tell Jaewon that Chairman Park sends his regards. And that his recent decisions have been noted. And then he got back in the car. And the car left. Amora stood on the pavement for 3 seconds, completing her assessment. Then she took out her phone and called Jaewon. He picked up immediately. Amora. A man called Chairman Park just sent me his regards outside my hospital, she said calmly. He had a car and a suit and the kind of smile that you see in medical dramas right before someone gets poisoned. I need you to tell me, right now, what that means. A brief silence. Then, in a voice she had not heard before, flat, precise, contained, he said, Are you safe right now? I am standing on a public pavement with approximately 40 people around me, she said. Yes. Don't move. Someone will be with you in 4 minutes. Jaewon. 4 minutes, Amora. Please. The please undid her more than anything. She stayed. 4 minutes later, a car arrived. Not his. A driver who said only her name and opened the door, and she got in with the decision of a woman who understood that some moments required action over deliberation. She was taken to a building she had not been to before, not O Group's main tower, but a quieter location in Yongsan, understated from the outside, unmistakably fortified once you knew what to look for. She was taken to a room that was, she noted with faint incredulity, warm, well-furnished, and stocked with the exact brand of ginger tea she bought. He pays attention, said a part of her. He also has enemies who know where you work, replied the rest of her. He arrived 11 minutes after she did. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, like a man who was angry and trying not to show it, and the anger was not at her, she understood instinctively, but for her, which was both the most reassuring and most complicated thing she had ever seen on another person's face. Are you all right? He said. I am fine, she said. Tell me. He sat across from her. He put his hands on the table, flat, deliberate, a gesture she recognized as him choosing transparency. Park Sungjin is a rival. He has been attempting to challenge certain business interests for some time. This is not new. He looked at her directly. What is new is that he has noticed you. Because of me, or because of you? She asked. Because of us, he said quietly. Because I have been seen with you. In places I do not usually go. In ways I do not usually, he stopped. In ways you do not usually care about someone, she finished. His jaw was tight. Yes. Amora sat with this. She was a woman who had learned to look at difficult truths the way she looked at difficult diagnoses, clear-eyed, with steady hands, and the understanding that being afraid of what you were seeing didn't make it go away. So by being with you, she said, I have become something that someone could use against you. Yes. Flat. Honest. Costing him something. And you are angry about that. Furious, he said. Simply. At me. At myself. He looked at her, and the anger had something beneath it, something closer to fear than she would have thought he was capable of. I should have. If you say protected me by pushing me away, Amora said firmly, I will prescribe you something for that outdated thinking and it will not be pleasant. He blinked. I am not a person who needs to be managed, Jaewon. I am a person who needs to be told the truth. So tell me the truth. She leaned forward. How dangerous is this, actually? He was quiet for a moment. Then, Park is not going to harm you. He is sending a message to me. Using you as a signal. His hands were still flat on the table. I will manage it. I know you will, she said. I also know that you are going to use this as a reason to pull back from me, and I am telling you in advance, don't. He stared at her. I am a surgeon in a foreign city with a ruthless mafia boss's enemies photographing my exit from my workplace, she said. I reserve the right to be informed and afraid and also to decide for myself what I am willing to take on. You do not get to make that decision for me. She held his gaze. I am not going anywhere, Jaewon. But I need you to stop trying to protect me from the truth. It is the one thing that will actually drive me away. The silence was long. Then something in him, something rigid and load-bearing, shifted. You are the most, he started. Stubborn, she offered. Extraordinary, he said. Her heart. Her absolute traitor of a heart. Tell me what you need to do, she said quietly. And let me decide if I can stand beside it. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and covered her hands with his. Stay tonight, he said. Not, I just. Something in his composure fractured slightly, enough for her to see the man beneath it completely clearly. I need to know you are safe. Amora turned her hands over and held his. Okay, she said. For the third time. Always okay, always toward him, always choosing him when the sensible thing said otherwise. She called Priya, who picked up immediately, listened to 30 seconds, and said I'll feed your plants and you owe me everything, and hung up. And Amora Owusu, Ghanaian-British cardiothoracic surgeon and the most unintentional woman in all of Seoul, spent the night in the fortress of the most dangerous man in Korea. Safe. Safer than she had felt in years. She slept in a guest room that was larger than her entire Seoul apartment. She would like to note that she went to the guest room, for the record. She was a reasonable woman and they had been seeing each other, if that was even the right word for whatever this was, for 2 weeks, and just because a man made your chest rearrange itself every time he walked into a room did not mean you abandoned all personal sequencing. She slept in the guest room. She did not sleep well. Not from fear. She had processed the fear about Chairman Park's visit with the same efficiency she applied to crisis in surgery. What kept her awake was the quieter, more persistent awareness of being inside Jae-won-oh's home. The real one. Not the restaurant, not the hospital coffee shop, not the riverbank at midnight. His actual private space, where he lived when the business was finished and the guards were at the door and there was no one to perform composure for. At 4 a.m. she gave up on sleep, found a kitchen that could have operated as a commercial restaurant, and located the equipment necessary for tea. She was sitting on the kitchen counter with her mug and her thoughts when Jae-won appeared in the doorway. He was in a plain dark t-shirt and joggers. His hair was down, not pushed back, just loose. His feet were bare. Amora had seen him in 200,001 suits and custom coats and the particular armor of a man who was always on. She was completely unprepared for him in a t-shirt. You couldn't sleep, he said. Not a question. I make tea when I'm processing things, she said. What's your excuse? He moved into the kitchen with the same ease he seemed to carry everywhere. Opened a cabinet. Retrieved a glass. Poured water with the quiet efficiency of someone who was accustomed to his own middle-of-the-night hours. I don't sleep much, he said. Jae-won. She looked at him. When did you last sleep a full night? He considered this with a seriousness that told her the answer was not recent. You need a consistent circadian rhythm, she said. It affects everything, cardiac function, cognitive performance, emotional regulation. Are you currently giving me a medical consultation from my kitchen counter at 4 a.m.? I am a doctor, she said. I cannot turn it off. It is a condition. He looked at her on his kitchen counter in her borrowed oversized shirt. She had been given options, with her tea and her medical opinions and her complete unself-consciousness in his space, and something moved through his expression that was so unguarded it almost hurt to see. He crossed the kitchen and sat on the stool at the counter island, close, not touching, but in the range of her warmth. This is different, he said. My being in your kitchen. You being anywhere near my real life, he said quietly. I have been, he stopped. Started again. I have kept everything separate for a long time. It was easier. To be alone, she said. To be safe, he said. There's a difference. Is there? Long pause. No, he said. I'm beginning to think there isn't. She looked at him in the kitchen light, the domestic, unglamorous, honest light of 4 a.m., and reached out and tucked a strand of his hair back from his face. A small gesture. Unpremeditated. Her surgeon's hands, gentle. He went completely still. Not the dangerous stillness. The other kind. The kind she had started to recognize as him allowing himself to be reached. Jae-won, she said quietly. You are allowed to have a life that isn't only the business. Easy to say. Easy to say, she agreed. But I am saying it in your kitchen at 4 a.m, which I think makes it more credible than most places. She tilted her head. What did you want? Before the business was everything. What did the young Jae-won-oh want? He looked at his glass of water. To build things, he said slowly. Architecture. I was good at it, the design, the structure, how things hold together. A pause. My father needed someone to hold the business together instead. Amora held this carefully. You build things, she said. Restaurants. Hospitals. You fund them. You're still doing it. He looked at her. In the only way you were given, she said. The silence between them was full of something that neither of them named yet. It was too new and too real for naming. But it was there, unmistakable and warm, like the moment in surgery when you have done the hardest part and you can feel the patient stabilizing under your hands. I want to show you something, he said. He took her up 3 floors. The building was his. She had grasped this with the vague, ongoing surreality of everything about him, to a room she had not passed. He opened the door and clicked the light on. It was a drafting room. Architectural drawings covered 1 full wall. Models, small, detailed, structurally perfect, sat on shelves and on a long work table. Buildings in various stages of conceptual existence. Some familiar, she recognized the bones of several Seoul landmarks in different states of what looked like revision or reimagination. Some she did not recognize at all, bigger, more ambitious, something that looked like a community structure, a public space, a hospital. You still do this, she said softly. At night, he said. When the business is quiet. She walked slowly along the wall of drawings. Stopped at a model of what was clearly a public medical center, small, regional, deliberately accessible. Designed for a community that wasn't wealthy. Where is this? She said. Rural South Korea, he said. There are areas with significant healthcare gaps. I have been, it's a project. He stopped. It's not finished. She turned to face him. You have a whole person in here, she said, and her voice had gone soft in the way it only went when something genuinely moved her. An entire person who builds things and thinks about community and designs hospitals for people who need them. She gestured at the room. And you hide him in here at 4 in the morning. It's not practical. J1. Her voice was gentle but unambiguous. I see you. His throat moved. She crossed the room and took his hand. All of you, she said. Not just the composed one. Not just the powerful one. All of you. He looked down at their joined hands. Then at her face. Then he did something she had not planned for. He lifted her hand and pressed it, once, against his chest, over his heart. She felt it. Strong and fast and human. Oh, said everything inside her. Amora, he said. Her name in his mouth like something he was finally letting himself keep. She rose up on her toes and kissed him, not like the first one, not strategic or desperate, but soft and deliberate and entirely hers, and he pulled her in with both arms, and the architectural room and the 4 a.m. kitchen and the entire complicated dangerous beautiful world fell away. When they finally came apart, his forehead rested against hers. I don't know how to do this, he said honestly. A relationship. In my life. I don't know how to protect you and be with you at the same time. You don't have to protect me, she said. You have to trust me. There's a difference. Is there? You've heard that before, she said, and smiled. Yes. There is. He pulled her back in, and this time held her simply, her cheek against his chest, his arms around her, the quiet of his real home at 4 in the morning. I'm going to figure it out, he said into her hair. Trust and protection. Both. Good, she murmured. I'll help. I'm very good at complicated structures. She felt the laugh move through his chest before she heard it. A real one. Full and low and surprised by itself. She closed her eyes. There it is, she thought. There is his laugh. Worth every single complicated thing. 3 days after the kitchen at 4 a.m., he took her to Jeju Island. Just like that. As if let's go to Jeju for the weekend was a sentence that existed in normal life, which for Amora Owusu it decidedly did not, but for J10 it apparently was, and she was choosing, with growing delight and mild terror, to live inside his version of normal for as long as it lasted. Priya had said, when informed, he is taking you to Jeju? Amora. Jeju. And then she had hung up and sent 17 fire emojis and then a voice note that was mostly incoherent. They flew on a private plane that was nicer than the apartment Amora had lived in during residency, which was a low bar honestly, but still. The villa was on the south coast, cliffside, with tangerine trees in the courtyard and a view of the sea that was so beautiful. Amora stood on the terrace for a full 2 minutes in complete silence before saying, J1. I'll take that as approval, he said from behind her, and she could hear the smile in it. They had 2 days, and they filled them with the particular richness of people who are learning each other and cannot quite get enough. They walked the old trails along the coast in the morning, Amora with her trainers and her commentary and her habit of stopping to photograph everything, J1 beside her with his hands in his pockets and the expression of a man who had forgotten this was possible. She taught him to bargain at the Jeju market, which he was terrible at because he kept almost smiling at the vendors and vendors found this disconcerting. She bought Hino caught seafood from women divers her grandmother's age and told him about her grandmother's best friend Mame Akua, who had sold fish in Makola market for 40 years and could silence a crowd with one look, and J1 listened like the story was a gift being given to him directly. He cooked dinner. She had not known he could cook. He had not offered this information, he simply appeared in the kitchen of the villa in an apron that looked deeply confused to find itself on a man like him, and produced doenjang jjigae from memory, from scratch, with the same quiet competence he brought to everything. She sat on the counter and watched him and felt something in her chest expand past any measurement she had clinical vocabulary for. Your mother taught you, she said. Not a question. His hands didn't stop moving. She liked knowing I could feed myself, he said. She said men who couldn't cook were making someone else's problem. I like your mother, Amora said. He looked over his shoulder. She would like you, he said. Simply. Like he had thought about this. Amora's heart made a decision she couldn't entirely sanction. That night, after dinner, after the sun had gone into the sea in a collapse of orange and rose, they sat on the terrace with wine and the sound of the ocean below, and J1 reached over without ceremony and took her hand. I need to tell you something, he said. She waited. Park has backed down, he said. Whatever message he intended, it has been received and responded to. He will not come near you again. A pause. I wanted you to know. How did you respond? She asked. He looked at the sea. Firmly, he said. No one was harmed. I want you to know that too. She looked at his profile, sharp, composed, carrying its weight. J1, she said carefully. I don't need to not know about your world. I just need to know that the man I am, she stopped. She had almost said falling in love with. The pause was long enough for him to hear what she hadn't said. He turned to look at her. In the Jeju night, with the sea below and the tangerine trees stirring, his dark eyes were very clear. Say it, he said quietly. I'm not ready to say it, she said, and her voice was entirely honest about the fact that this was not because it wasn't true. I know, he said. Neither am I. He looked at her steadily. But Amora, I am going to say it first when we're ready, because I want you to know that it isn't something I do easily or lightly or because it's convenient, and when I say it, I will mean it for a very long time. Her eyes were doing something medical and embarrassing. She stopped. Started. That is the most terrifying and wonderful thing anyone has ever said to me. I know, he said again, and moved closer, and kissed her with the particular quality of something being said in a language words hadn't been invented for yet. The ocean moved below them. The night was warm. His hands were gentle on her face and she was kissing him back with everything she had and everything she was becoming. When they broke apart, she pressed her forehead to his. J1, she said, slightly breathless. Amora, he said, and the way he said her name, like it was both an answer and a beginning. She laughed, and he pulled her in, and they sat curled together on the terrace while the Jeju stars came out above them, and everything was exactly, almost perfectly, whole. Almost. Because at 11:43 p.m., while she was beginning to fall asleep against his shoulder and he had his chin resting against her hair and his eyes were half closed for the first time in what felt like years. His phone rang. He stilled. She felt it, the instant return of every wall. The body she'd felt relax against her going precisely, professionally alert. He answered in Korean, and his voice was a frequency she hadn't heard before, low, contained, and underneath it something that was not quite fear but was fear's close relative. He stood. She sat up and watched him walk to the edge of the terrace, his back to her, his hand gripping the railing. When he turned back, the J1 she'd had for 2 days was gone. Not entirely, she could still find him if she looked, but he was packed away, efficiently and completely, under everything else. Something has happened, he said. I need to go back to Seoul. What happened? He looked at her. A long, reading look. Then, choosing trust, she could see him choose it, he said. My younger brother has disappeared. The bottom dropped out of the evening. Disappeared, she said carefully. What does that mean in the context of? Park Sung-jin, he said. It means Park Sung-jin has taken my brother. Silence. The ocean below continued its indifferent, beautiful movement. His retaliating, she said. For you backing him down. Yes. Amora stood up. We go back tonight, she said. He looked at her. Amora. Tonight, J1. She was already moving toward the villa. And then you tell me everything. All of it. No more managed information. If I am standing beside you in this, I stand in all of it. She paused at the door and looked back at him. Are we agreed? He was looking at her with that deep, unguarded expression, the one she'd earned, slowly, over weeks of refusing to be managed and refusing to leave. Agreed, he said. She nodded. And went inside to pack. They were in the air within the hour. Amora sat across from him on the plane and watched him work. Phone calls made in the precise, low voice, texts sent and received with the efficiency of a man running a military operation from 30,000 feet. His face was closed. His eyes were calculating. This was the version of J10 that Seoul whispered about, that made men like Gerald evaporate from rooms, that the city had named the icebreaker. And Amora, who had now seen the man who cooked doenjang jjigae in an apron and drew hospital blueprints at 4 a.m. and laughed with his whole chest when he forgot to stop himself. Amora held both versions and chose neither one exclusively. She chose all of him. His name is Minute-jun, J1 said during a break, without looking up from his phone. He is 28. He teaches music. He has, a fractional pause. He has spent most of his life successfully outside of what I do. I made sure of it. Amora understood immediately. You protected him from it, she said. Deliberately. He is all I have left of my mother, he said. Very quiet. Oh, J1. What do you need from me? She asked. He looked up. You should go home. To your apartment. I can have. What do you need? She repeated, from me. A long pause. Stay, he said. I function better, he stopped. I think more clearly when you are. I'm not going anywhere, she said. I told you. Stop testing that. Something crossed his face that was almost relief, quickly integrated into the composure. He nodded. They landed at 2 a.m. The next 12 hours were a controlled storm. She stayed in a secure room in the Yongsan building, not locked in, which she had been very clear about, while Jaewon moved between meetings and phone calls and things she was not present for and chose not to demand presence in. She understood the difference between information and operational territory. She texted Priya. In Seoul. Safe. Long story. Feed my plants. Priya sent back, feeding plants. Also very emotionally invested in your life right now. Please don't die. She reviewed research papers. She drank the ginger tea that kept appearing. She did not let herself catastrophize, which took more energy than the reading. At 3 in the afternoon, the door opened. Jaewon walked in. Behind him, slightly rumpled, clearly shaken, but visibly unharmed, was a young man with the same jawline and considerably more relaxed energy, looking around the room with wide eyes. Minute Juno was safe. Amora released a breath she had been holding since the Jeju terrace. Hyung, Minute Jun said, the Korean for older brother, she knew, and then said something in rapid Korean that made Jaewon's composure crack, briefly, completely, before he pulled his brother into an embrace that said everything neither of them were saying. Amora looked at the ceiling and made a private decision to excuse herself, except there was nowhere to go in this room, so she simply looked at the wall very hard. Nuna. She turned. Minute Jun was looking at her. Nuna, the honorific for older sister, deployed with a warm familiarity that suggested he had been fully briefed, with an expression that was curious and exhausted and somehow already charmed. I'm told, he said in excellent English, that you kissed my brother in a bar to escape a blind date. I did, Amora confirmed. And that you are not afraid of him. Not particularly. Minute Jun looked at his brother. Then back at Amora. A tired grin spread across his face. I like her, he said simply. I know, Jaewon said. After Minute-jun had been taken to rest, Jaewon and Amora were alone in the room. He looked, for the first time since Jeju, exhausted. The particular exhaustion of someone who has been running on adrenaline and discipline and now that the immediate crisis has resolved, cannot quite locate the next gear. She crossed the room and put her hand on his jaw and made him look at her. His safe, she said. His safe, he repeated. Like he was still calibrating it. And Park. Managed, Jaewon said. Definitively. He held her gaze. Amora. This is my world. This will happen again. Not the same way, but something will always. I know, she said. And you're. I'm still here, she said. Jaewon. I have held hearts in my hands that weren't ready to stop. I know what it is to fight for something that matters. I know, she stopped. Her voice had gone somewhere honest and unprotected that she was going to go all the way into because he deserved all the way. I know that what I feel for you is real and serious and not something I'm willing to walk away from because it's complicated. My whole life is complicated. I am a black woman who is an African surgeon in Seoul, falling. She stopped. The almost word hung in the room. He looked at her. Say it, he said again. Quiet. Careful. Like something priceless on the edge of a shelf. She looked at him, this man she had kissed to save herself. This dangerous and tender and quietly extraordinary man who drew hospitals at 4 a.m. and laughed like he was surprised by the existence of joy and held his brother like the whole world was in his arms. Falling in love with you, she said. I am falling in love with you, and I am terrified and I am not leaving. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Jaewon, the icebreaker, the most feared name in Seoul, the man who sat alone at bars with a stillness that cleared rooms, crossed the space between them in 2 steps. Took her face in both hands, and kissed her with everything he had kept managed and contained and locked away for 34 years. When he pulled back, his forehead was against hers and his eyes were closed and his voice, when it came, was barely a sound. I was going to say it first, he said. She laughed, shaking and tearful and completely herself. You waited too long. I know. He pulled her in. Both arms. All the way. I'm going to spend a long time making up for it. She held on. Her arms around him, his heartbeat under her ear, strong and fast and entirely, beautifully human. Outside, Seoul moved in its millions of ordinary and extraordinary ways. Minute-jun was sleeping down the corridor. The guards were at the doors. The city glittered. Amora Owusu was in the arms of the most dangerous man in Korea, and she had never in her life felt more at home. She was happy. She was so happy. And then Jaewon's phone buzzed. He didn't look at it. She felt him choose not to look at it. He held her tighter. It buzzed again. And then his lead guard, the one she had negotiated into giving her personal space, who had exactly one facial expression and wore it with great dignity, knocked on the door. Mr. O, the guard said. I'm sorry to interrupt. Amora felt Jaewon's arms tighten one more time before they loosened. What is it? He said. The guard opened the door. His single facial expression was doing something she had never seen it do before. There is a woman downstairs, the guard said. She says, he paused. Recalibrated. She says she is Dr. Owusu's next of kin. Amora went perfectly still. Jaewon looked at her. She looked at the guard. That's impossible, she said carefully. My grandmother is dead. I have no. She says, the guard continued, with the extreme care of a man delivering information he has not yet processed himself, that she is your mother. The room went completely silent. My mother, thought Amora, died when I was 9 years old. She stepped back from Jaewon's arms. What did she say, exactly? She said. She said, tell my daughter Amora that I have been looking for her for 26 years. And tell the man she is with that he needs to know who he is dealing with before it is too late. The room held its breath. Jaewon's hand found hers in the silence. And Amora Owusu, who had survived everything, who was afraid of nothing, who had kissed a stranger and found a home in him, stood at the edge of a door she had believed sealed shut for 26 years. And did not yet know whether opening it would save her. Or destroy everything she had just found. She thought her mother was dead. She has been alive, and she knows Jaewon-o's world, and she says it is not safe. Who is she? Why did she disappear? What does she know about Jaewon that Amora doesn't? And can a love this real survive the truth that is coming? Part 2 is coming. Drop Part 2 in the comments right now if you need to know what happens next. And if you watched all the way to the end, you are exactly the kind of person this story was made for. Smash that like button, share this with someone who loves a good story, and subscribe so you never miss what comes next. See you in Part 2.